where I want to see him step up and bring it to the next level in this next season. We are in. There is your first look at our confirmed rosters for today. I was kind of wondering which players, especially Immortals, we're going to bring to the day with all of these issues that have been going around. So I'm excited to see that they did get pretty here in time. Let's head into it as we hit our first champion select of the day. It is once again Immortals Academy playing Golden Guardians Academy, and we're into the bans already.
Yeah, not a whole lot of surprises coming through. Probably the biggest thing that's popping out to me right now is kind of this Hecarim that, you know, it has been very strong. We've been seeing a lot of players opt for it in order to be aggressive and have a lot of power in the mid game. But everything other than that is kind of pretty standard. You have to kind of take the Pantheon off the table. You have to get the Olaf out of the hands of Potluck because of how aggressive both these champions can be. And talented players like Tally and Yunbi on the opposite side of the map, you want to take off some of these strong blind pickable solo laners. So I don't feel like either team is really showing a whole lot of what they want to be doing off of these bans, and we're going to have to see the transition. I don't expect this Cho'Gath to necessarily come through, even though it has been something that Topoon has played to quite the effect historically, but instead we're just going to be getting the Talia. The Cho'Gath, once again, Oceanic top players giving us a little bit of a heads up. It's like, yes.
And you do have this. Topoon is the first player we're going to see today from Legacy, which did make a Worlds run, which did win the last season of the OPL, which did upset Mad Lions at Worlds. There are Legacy players in almost every matchup today. They have been dispersed across the Academy. So keep your eye on those players as we get there, because I think between them and the Order players that have also made it across the ocean, there's a high expectation, at least from me, that they smurf a little bit here. They'll be going against Tally, who of course was also being able to play at that top level in the OPL. Potluck and Pretty will lock in a Jhin and a Leona for their bot lane. We get a Talia jungle for Academy. Golden Guardians will grab themselves a Kai'Sa and a Galio.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how these teams are shaping up, because as I look at it so far, we're automatically going to be seeing a lot of pressure down in the bottom lane as both teams picking carry junglers and bottom lanes that like to fight. So I'm kind of curious how these two teams are going to be transitioning the rest of their draft. You often look at these kind of compositions as what I like to call a threat overload composition. You pick a lot of characters that can be very aggressive, and you don't need to pick a whole lot of peel for your carries if your opponents are too busy dealing with all of the other damage threats that are also on your team. Right now, Golden Guardians already banning
tweeting about this earlier today, actually.
Was it today?
And I was following it.
It was yesterday.
Look, I've been browsing Twitter. You were highlighting something that I thought was really interesting, where a lot of these teams are drafting this composition, but then they're not actually managing to activate it because of the way they're playing. Would you like to touch on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we touched on some of the Proving Grounds teams that we've been seeing, and in order to build a lot of these threat overload kind of compositions, you need to be having a lot of champions that can actually continue to fight even in melee range. They want to be right on top of their opponents, and right now I'm kind of liking the way that Golden Guardians is picked, because Kai'Sa and Graves are relatively happy playing at short range when compared to things like the Talia and the Jhin. Jhin wants to be able to play from very, very far away, but if something like the Galio gets on top of him, he suddenly loses a lot of effectiveness in his ability to pick targets and play individually. So with Golden Guardians taking away the Renekton, I mean, they're taking away this natural front line that we often see with the Jhin and Talia in order to just create a lot of pressure for them, as well as an easy gank. And this Rise is really fitting in. It's a little bit later scaling than a lot of the threat overload compositions tend to go for, but is an absolutely insane threat as the game continues to go on.
Yeah, we'll complete that roster in the mid lane there with the Rise. That assumes that we'll see our Galio shoved down bottom then? Or are we pushing the Rise elsewhere?
It's possible. I mean, it can still flex around. We don't actually know yet where these guys are going to be going, and I know that there's a couple people in chat who has been following a lot of the happenings on Twitter, might not really like this Gnar blind pick coming out from Topoon, but it is a very confident pick, and currently, with Tally opting to hover the Aatrox, actually unlikely to get particularly punished. One of the big things that this Gnar really is worried about is getting dove by very aggressive champions, and currently, Graves and the Gangplank, while two very strong champions, not necessarily well known for their diving potential. So Immortals getting away with murder as it will, and we'll see exactly how effectively they're going to be playing. But as we said, both teams kind of opting into this 4-threat, one, initiation kind of character coming through, and it's really going to come down to all of these players that we were touching on, right? We touched on the Oceanic top lane, where these guys have a lot of experience playing against each other. One of them can find an advantage. They should be able to really bully. True. Yeah, they've been playing
what's exciting to me, because just for a little bit of extra color, Tally played mid lane on that same Legacy roster. So he's kind of swapping back round, pulling out towards the top side versus Topin, who was, of course, playing top at Worlds. I'm very, very excited to see how they play against each other with that added experience. We also have down in the bot lane the matchup we were highlighting, Prismal versus Keith. That's going to be a Jhin Kai'Sa matchup, Joshi. And so I was curious, because it has been the focus of a lot of conversation. I feel like this is a very good season for AD carries, finally. How do you feel about kind of Kai'Sa Jhin, the trifecta that's getting played down bottom there?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, both these characters are so strong, and the reason why they've been thriving so much right now is because we have been seeing these compositions that don't have a whole lot of strong front lines, right? You're not necessarily seeing a whole lot of big tanks being played, with the exception of, like, some Ornn and Volibear generally, but they are able to pretty accurately select their targets. Kai'Sa's able to dive in with the enemy team, and the big thing is going to determine how effective they're going to be is actually going to be during this laning phase. So I'm really going to be looking at the Leona and Galio to see which of them actually get ahead as they start moving into the mid game, because they both scale really well, and neither of them are going to have damage drop-offs later in the game because there are no front lines that they have to worry about.
And you can expect Chime to play a little bit more in that roaming style. We talked about how he picks up Bard a lot. Kind of fits in the same category. Expect to see him move around the map. Joey has been playing in the LCS. He's been playing during lock-in, and he's been just your classic support, playing those hard-engaged tank carries to lead off teamfights, and doing a really good job of it. So we have a little bit of an antithetical support style in that all-star bot lane, and I'm really, really fascinated to see whether or not Keith and Joey can bully out Prismal, take advantage of maybe Chime's more roam-heavy style in that bottom lane.
Yeah, I'm curious too a little bit, because Joey actually played with Yumbi back at Scouting Grounds, so he's got a little bit more experience playing alongside this guy. And I'm I'm kind of curious to see, whether that's going to play any effect into the way that they like to play around. Are they going to try and shut Yunbi down? Are they going to say, nah, don't worry about him, he's not that much of a threat, we're going to instead focus our efforts on the enemy jungle? But it's, it's definitely one of those things where when you've played with people like Tally and Tapu, you have a very different appreciation for the things they like to do on the map. And with both of these supports playing the roaming style, I'm excited to see where they're actually going to be paying their attention to.
You do have Pretty opposite Yunbi in lane, and if you haven't heard his name before, he's been one of the up-and-coming talents flagged in the European region. He's been playing in a lot of the ERLs. He played for Vitality Academy, Mad Lions Academy, and the Vodafone Giants. Won the Spanish regional final, the Iberian Cup. So he's kind of been tearing up those academy leagues over in Europe, and I'm really interested to get a first look at him as well. And we get the relative strength comparison. Academy leagues in Europe, OPL, and a amateur all kind of coming together in our first academy game of the season.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy, TJ. I'm really looking forward to seeing how everybody stacks up here.
I'm proud of us, Josh, for being drafted into this game, 3 minutes before it started? We made it through the draft, we're on a roll, we got our storylines down, everything's going great.
It's almost like we were doing prep for this anyway, right? Just looking at all these teams, there's a lot of opportunity to look at how everybody's going to be stacking up, just because, it is, like, I feel like a lot of the academy seasons before have been very focused on some of the domestic talent. It's like, are they going to move up? Are they not? Where are they going to be going? Do they deserve some of their slots compared to some of the people that are both above them and below them? And now, we suddenly have like 4 times as many players to suddenly look at, right? You have the, we already talked about the domestic veterans, domestic rookies. We have the Oceanic players on their way over, and now we're starting to see a lot more people coming in from Europe because Pretty's not the only one that has had an opportunity to come over. We're also seeing Luger on 100 Thieves Academy come over, and we'll see a little bit more from him a little bit later on. But it's just so crazy to see how many people are suddenly here.
Yeah, and I don't want to drop you out. If I'm not mistaken, Luger wasn't able to make it over in time.
Oh,
so I don't want to set up false hope. I believe we are playing with sub in Luger's place. And there are going to be a couple of that. It's kind of fascinating because it's a lot of the teams that are missing their LCS rosters are also the teams that weren't able to get their LCS Academy roster visas together. So the teams that are already a little short-staffed are even more short-staffed down here in Academy. So we're getting some players like there's one sub, I believe, for CLG, who's just been pulled right out of a collegiate team. We have a Harrisburg Storm player hitting the main stage today. Fizzy, the support player. So you have...
That'll be exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. I'm happy for him, don't get me wrong, but you do have a little bit of chaos even down here in Academy. That is on TSM Academy that Fizzy is being pulled up.
We don't want to be, we don't want to knock on these guys too hard, right? Because we're seeing that despite some of our initial expectations, like the Golden Guardians roster, which pulled Niles and Iconic off of the Maryville roster, they're actually performing way better than I think a lot of people were expecting. So I think Fizzy has an opportunity to show that, collegiate is still something that matters quite a bit as well over the entire course of League of Legends, and we'll see later on how well he's actually able to do it.
Yeah, it is time to get into our first game of the day. So we'll refocus here. Golden Guardians Academy take on Immortals Academy in the first game of the 2021 Academy season.
Fanning out. Pretty standard stuff right now, TJ. Now, something that's been interesting is, the talk around Jhin itemization. We might see it come up right now as Joey is going to be face-checking 4 people.
Joey just tried to hang out in a bush, will be taunted there. So, thumbs up to Chime for landing the taunt. That'll be everything that happens, though. Josh, back over to you. Tell me about Jhin itemization.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of people looking at Jhin and the different things that he can start. Obviously, you still have the Doran's Blade, Doran's Shield as major options. And then something that's been growing in popularity was the boots and 4 potions so that you're able to get concentrating going. But now, Keith opting for a little bit of extra damage and honestly a little bit more sustain coming out with the longsword and the regular potions, because he's going to be able to have a little bit more opportunity to just get to his items faster than a lot of other players are going to be, because he's not going to be making that 400 gold stop off on the Doran's Blade, and we'll see if he can actually stand up to the fact that he doesn't have the extra health nor the extra movement speed that he would normally expect for the Doran's item.
I want to give a shout out to Tally for running up to the top lane and flashing that legacy emote at his former teammate. Just a little bit of friendship on display. We do kick things off across the map with pretty slow start. Nothing crazy apart from that attempted 3-man gank down bottom. But I was kind of hoping for a little more of, we're starting things off with the Oceanic players who play fast and loose. I was hoping for some chaos, but we're going to be playing very, very safe, as is probably to be expected at the start of the season.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously the 2 theories. Right, when things are brand new, it's like you just go hard, or you're just like, maybe we need to feel things out. And it looks like, both these teams are kind of opting into just feeling it out, seeing how you're actually able to play as a team. Because obviously, they've been having opportunities to scrim, they've been having opportunities to practice, but it's a different world when you're actually playing on stage, and suddenly your games mean more than just your pride. You're actually playing for opportunities to continue playing later in the season. You're trying to prove things, but you don't want to give too many advantages over to your opponents, because suddenly that could be proving something very different.
I do want to maybe kind of go back to the amateur scene and that theme of being on a bigger stage with a conversation about Rosethorn briefly, because I was actually very, very critical of him when he was playing an amateur. for some of the positioning mistakes and stuff that would go awry. And then I was really impressed when he hit scouting grounds, and a lot of that stuff had been cleaned up. Not all of it, though. What is your take on Rosethorn coming into this season as kind of one of the hot new rookies hitting the stage?
Well, I mean, as one of the players who didn't have as much time, like actually playing on a team, as a lot of the other players in scouting grounds, you did see some changes in the way that he liked to play relative to a bunch of other teams. He was a little bit more selfish. He was a little bit more greedy. And right now, we'll get back to that as Joey finding Zenby in the mid lane.
Yep, Zenith blade in. Yunbi will burn Flash. Pretty to chase, actually. Over the wall with a flash of their own. And Yunbi slinks into the bush. We get nothing but some burned summoners in the mid lane. We already see some good roaming coming out, though. Joey showing up here in mid.
Yeah, I mean, we already talked about that. He just wanted to come in, say hello, and committing both flashes here to actually get it while Yumbi's out of mana means that there's no real opportunity for any turnaround here, but not going to be having a whole lot more after that, right? You have the phase rush on the rise. You're able to get out of range rather easily, and I'm a little bit surprised that Pretty actually thought he had the blood. He thought that he had an opportunity to go for it, and instead, just going to be backing away and forcing Yumbi to teleport back. Small advantage, yes, but potentially not worth it in the long run.
Pretty still does have that TP, as you say. Some slight advantage there in the mid lane. I don't know. You have phase rush, Oriana. You go for it. In the Spanish pro,
I mean, it's the confidence, right? Yeah, I mean, I think it is, right? It's just kind of a showing of confidence. He's trying to play here on a different stage. He's trying to show that he is worth picking up, and sometimes you got to be aggressive, because they had a pretty good idea on what Graves was. They knew he was at the Krugs. They knew there wasn't a good opportunity for him to try and turn things around. So no real risk of anything going particularly badly means that you're able to make some of these plays. And putting Rise behind just means that he's not going to be as strong of a threat later on. And now, Pretty's going to have an opportunity to try and go back and have his teleport, as we might start seeing some scuffling around the Dragon.
Yeah, I hypothesized that it would be Chime roaming a lot, pulling out the Galio, historically a Bard player. But we're seeing a lot more action here from Joey at the start of things.
No flash.
As Potluck will show up here again, Yunbi already had been punished by that flash. We'll get the same thing. Ooh, deep dive in, down bottom, Chime. Up close against Joey, this could be a mistake, and indeed it is! You step too close, and it's first blood for the game, passed over to Immortals Keith in the bottom line.
Yeah, a little bit surprising to see how deep he was willing to go there with, you know, Keith's heal still up. There wasn't a whole lot of damage threat. Prismal isn't level 6, so he can't really join. And honestly, just kind of a positioning mistake coming through for Chime on this Galio. I don't know how much it's going to hurt them long run, but we did touch a little bit on how the fact that Keith wants to find these early advantages. He wants to be more aggressive a lot of the time in the mid game, but at the same time, because it's causing the entire team to reset after crashing a wave, it's going to be giving Golden Guardians an opportunity on the map once again. Nothing in League of Legends ever comes for free, and this time First Blood is being traded for the Infernal Dragon.
I want to call something out because I did find an interview with Chime he did with the eSports Network, and we can talk about it over this replay. Is you can see him getting a little bit over-aggressive, and that was something he talked about during this preseason interview. He said that the Oceanic players he's playing with have a more aggressive skirmish-like playstyle that he enjoys, and coming into the season, he wants to dominate with Prismal down bottom, using that aggressive, more skirmish-heavy playstyle. And so far, they're kind of being out-skirmished by this Immortals roster. We've seen Joey setting the tempo of Rome so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, Chime kind of got a little bit ahead of himself there. You know, you kind of saw it in the replay that he was expecting Keith to just take the punch and just be in a spot where he wasn't super far deep into the lane. But Keith flashing backwards, right, is going to just mean that Chime goes way farther than he was potentially initially expecting, as Top Boon and Tally just going to be tapping each other a little bit up in the top lane. But the thing that's kind of sticking out to me, right, besides the fact that Joey has been moving a little bit more proactively on the map and really starting to put Yunbi behind is the fact that every single position for Immortals is currently leading in CS. And because of the fact that we haven't necessarily seen a whole lot of jungler intervention top lane, because of the fact that Joey hasn't necessarily been in his own lane as much as Chime has, this just kind of feels like a good player difference, right? Immortals are just winning across the map simply because they are able to be aggressive.
Team diff, says Josh.
Team diff.
Tally up top does take a few hits here, and you are seeing Tuffin kind of bully his former mid laner. Something to keep an eye on is we have had a week of kind of rough Gnars in the LCS, but this Gnar is enabling Immortals to get the first objective to their team. They'll be able to pick up this Rift Herald here. It looks like uncontested.
Yeah. There you go. I mean, there's a lot of questions on whether or not Gnar has been really effective, but this is kind of showing like one of the big strengths that the champion does have, right? You're able to create priority. It does have a winning matchup against a lot of the meta top laners, and Gangplank is one of them. It kind of feels to me like Top Rangers came into this with such an attitude as like, hey, you played mid lane for me for a long time, so I'm going to guess you are slightly out of practice in this role, and I'm just going to bully you around. And so far, 10 CS up, is mostly even in the lane due to the extra gold generation that Gangplank does have, but because the priority that comes along with it, as you already touched on, Rift Herald's going to be going over, and we're seeing a 2,000 gold lead already starting to come out for Immortals. And we touched on it, threat overload compositions against threat overload compositions are very much about who has more gold at the time. Currently, that's Immortals.
Currently, indeed, leading the way in every way except Dragons. We will get another one of those in about 2 minutes, which I think should skew over towards Immortals, who do have a little bit of a spike right now, coming to these mid-game team fights, especially with the leads they have across the map. Should we go late, however, I think you start to see Golden Guardians edging out a lead between the Ryze, the GP, and the Kai'Sa. Do you agree with me that they can sit on that scaling comp?
Yeah, I mean, they shouldn't be too worried about actually giving over too... excuse me. They do need to be worried about giving over too much right now, but it is, something where they do have a decent amount of power coming out in the next couple of minutes, right? Gangplank is going to be hitting what looks to be the Trinity Force in this game. Kai'Sa's should be on one item, but the big difference that we're really going to be looking at is the fact that Gnar also going to be very strong coming out and is going to have the teleport available if he chooses not to teleport up into the top lane right now. Suddenly you're potentially looking at a 5v4 for Immortals, and while they can kind of rest on these things, they don't need to contest it. If you're already looking at the more aggressive OPL skirmish style, to me, that says, hey, we want to fight for these dragons. We want to take every skirmish that we can find. And so it worries me a little bit if Tally isn't able to be a part of this upcoming team fight, if that's what his team actually wants to do, because you're already seeing Golden Guardians starting to coalesce around the dragon down here at the bottom side, and then at least try and contest for some position.
Yeah, Golden Guardians did get a couple of wards in there, but they've now fallen back, and I think this will be an Immortal Drake. I don't see a way for Golden Guardians to get back into that river. So it looks like Chime's hopes of a skirmish-heavy playstyle have been a little bit squashed, at least so far. He'll get a little bit of skirmishing in his own jungle, but it's not really a fight so much as an ambush. Potluck will even wall things off as Joey goes even further here. The Weaver's Wall shouldn't really stop Golden Guardians from backing away, so they lose a kill, but nothing more.
Well, they're going to be losing a little bit more here. They are going to be able to crash the bottom lane turret with this Rift Herald, and should get a couple of plates for it as well, and reward themselves with the Ocean Dragon, right? They're kind of winning everything across the board, and it really comes down to the fact that we said, like, Joey's the one who you said is going to be this aggressive support. Well, excuse me, Chime. Joey's been the one who's just absolutely going off, and there's not a lot of supports who just be like, I'm going to flash this wall.
Joey
I'm just going to do it.
really good in Locker, so I am not surprised to see him doing equally well here. I am very impressed by the extent to which he has shut down Chime. And part of that is that Prismal doesn't really have damage yet, into it, Jhin at least, so maybe we'll see that change, but you can see here, this is just all Joey all the time, perfectly synced up with Potluck.
Yeah, it was really impressive to see that he actually stunned the Graves on top of the seismic shot. And Potluck had very little he could do after then. Then Joey's like, oh, I think we can keep going.
Yeah.
But, you know, he's tanky. It doesn't really matter. He's just buying a little bit more space so they can put down the Rift Herald without risk of it going away. But you could also tell that Chime wasn't ready for the aggression onto Rosethorn. He had the ultimate. He was very obviously in range. And the extra magic damage shield that could have come out, could have bought Rosethorn enough time to actually get himself over the wall to safety. And ultimately, this aggression, I mean, when you have the first move, you're going to be able to get to a lot of these fights in a winning position a little bit faster. And I'm a little bit surprised to see how much attention is being paid down to the bot lane. It says to me that they are trying to get this turret, and if Prismal and Chime still not too long, oh, they just want to fight.
Taunt dive in, Potluck too far forward.
Here's
will
Nar.
Go down, and Golden Guardians may be in trouble. There's TV behind him. Top Boot very far forward. Good ult will find 2 kills now as Keith falls, and Goodby is locked down, sure to follow. Pretty able to get that kill, and Rosethorn may be too far forward. They're going to be locked down by Joey as well. It is disastrous for Golden Guardians. 3 players fall. Immortals only lose Potluck in the skirmish.
Remember, I don't know if you could tell, but the phrase that I was going for right there, TJ, before Golden Guardians so rudely interrupted me by trying to fight was, they should probably get out of here. They still have a teleport disadvantage. There are 4 members of Immortals already here, and they end up losing way more than just the turret. They were almost always going to lose anyway. They end up giving over several kills, and while they get 1 in return, we're starting to look at an Immortals composition that is very quickly moving past the weak point of Orianna in this mid game, and we're going to start seeing her with a level 2 ultimate with a lot more AP, going to be able to blow up all these squishy characters with the Gnar on top of them, and they can win, right? They're looking at Potluck, but look at how quickly the response comes out from the rest of Immortals. Gnar teleports almost instantly, pretty catches multiple people.
Of it is the best Gnar ult I've seen in America, which I admit is a low bar. Shoutouts to Hooney, but still, I think it worked really well.
Yes.
We needed the Australians to come and show us how to handle dangerous wildlife. Here comes a Rift Herald in the mid lane. Speaking of wildlife, as that will be yet more turrets passed over to Immortals. They did get that turret down bottom. They did get this here, and that is a clean sweep of all the tier 1s, completing a 3-turret early game. And there's basically no way you can look at this and be feeling good for Golden Guardians right now. We talked earlier, I kind of made the pitch that if we went late, you know, Tally, the Rise, like Kaisa maybe, and it's not looking like we're headed towards that parallel universe.
Nah, it doesn't look like it, but this is kind of the part where Immortals needs to prove that they are as good as they are currently looking. Because when we see this, when you get all of the outer turrets before like the 20-minute mark, the game starts to slow down quite a bit a lot of the time, because you are far ahead, but you're not so far ahead that you're comfortable starting to dive these inhibitor turrets, that you're comfortable starting to dive a lot of these you know, major things that you have to do, and you have to start playing the map really effectively, like Tapoon might be doing right now.
Yeah, Tally cools down the ultimate, trying to play at range, but Tapoon just pops the ulti. Got Potluck as well. There's no escape. Goodbye, Tally. And Golden Guardians lose yet another kill. And I think that's my problem with your theorem. This game would be slowing down if Immortals didn't know how to keep applying macro pressure, right? This is where maybe you start to see an Academy mistake. But this Immortals roster has looked so clean, shot calling-wise, throughout this entire game, I'm just not expecting.
Yeah, this is where, you know, generally Immortals and these teams that are leading start looking to trade a lot of these objectives. You just saw that Yundi up in the top lane is able to get a turret, but it's likely going to be traded for a ton of damage here on this bottom lane inner turret, and that's going to be something that Immortals are very happy to do. Yeah, and the Dragon as well, but here's a teleport coming through, Tapoon can't join.
Yundi.
He has no mana!
Has no mana. Will ult in to a 1v3 and instantly be destroyed. Chime tries to follow up, has his own heroic entrance. is also CC'd down low. Golden Guardians, I guess, only lose Yunbi. Oh no, Rosethorn is deep in the back lines here and will fall as well. Okay, Killer Instinct in, Prismal following one by one. That kill will be unpunished so far. Curtain Call over the wall, pops the thumbs up, gets dunked on by Chime, and will die.
It keeps going, TJ. We're still fighting. The dragon's already dead. Just go. He teleported in with no mana.
He had no mana.
He had like a rotation of spells. Maybe.
Shut up, he
What
was
are you
like,
gonna
yo,
do?
I'm gonna cast my spell. That was it.
Yeah, let me move on top of them. And then, you know, Chime had a pretty decent ultimate, right? He got a couple people in the shockwave.
All Yunbi was doing there was casting Chime's ulti. That was all he was doing. He was part of the cast time.
Yeah. If Yumbi had mana, I think that play was plausible, right? If he had some damage, now Chime
sure.
is probably just gonna die. Oh, no, he does flash over the wall. He's gonna be okay. Yeah. Alright, good job, Chime. Good job, Chime. You know, silver linings, every cloud, something like that. You know, that's something
Every
people
cloud
say,
drake
right?
you give over to the other team has a silver lining. I like it.
But
you know, I was wondering when we'd start to see first day haven't had Pisa jitter. May have been just then. Joey will start off this fight strong. Low on HP though, traded out Yunbi. Able to get a little bit of revenge. Rosethorn falls during that fight. Keith able to find him, but a one-for-one trade certainly isn't the worst, even if it's not perfect for Golden Guardians.
yeah, I mean, honestly, this is the part of the game where you're starting to trade. And if it was like 20, 30 seconds later that fight happened, I would say, oh, they killed the jungler for support. Easy, let's go do the Baron. But it hadn't spawned yet. That's how far ahead Immortals really are in this game, right? They don't have a Baron to go hit, but trading these pieces, right? Giving over the bottom lane outer turret in order to start taking down this attempted turret, absolutely worth it. Jump goes in.
Tries to do it to him. It does force him to zone back, full behind their inhib. They do drop the turret. I really like that engage from Immortals, even if it didn't work out.
Yumbi. Okay.
I'll do it again! Yunbi shouts, but his team talks him down.
Nobody will expect it the fourth time. Oh!
My god. Solar Flare in, that was a step too far forward. Prismal did trade out one for one, shutting down Potluck, which may be very important actually for Golden Guardians, as it will deny the Baron for at least the next 30 seconds.
Yeah, and it is important, right, that now if you can start getting these trades without giving over anything more, it's worth it, right? Golden Guardians are very happy to trade these, provided they aren't going to be giving up structures or objectives on the rest of the map. Giving up kills, yeah, that's fine, as long as you're not giving over anything more that will allow Immortals to snowball the end of the game, because evening up the gold and trading even that way, one, your opponents have a lot of shutdowns, so you're generally coming out ahead in that regard, but also minimizing the gold difference between the two teams. And Golden Guardians, I want to try and do as much of that as possible in the next minute and a half or so when Immortals are going to start coalescing around this dragon once again. So it's exciting to see that Prismal has the confidence and the mental fortitude to actually make some of these tougher calls on the map as Joey just looks for Tell.
Alright, Joey. Finds Tally in what Tally thought, to be fair, was their own jungle. Will inform them of the eminent domain that Immortals has. Shut down the kill, and this should be another turret, I think, unless Yunbi wants to get frisky with top in.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, both jungles are definitely Joey's jungles. He can kind of go wherever he wants, and more importantly, as they bring everybody around, we'll get to see how Prismal actually found the kill onto Potluck here. So
that's good.
He just goes in, and that's the kind of damage that Kai'Sa has on the map. Obviously, getting out, tougher question, right? It was a one-way mission the entire time, but this time, ends up working out, gets a big shutdown to go over in his favor, but they're still losing out pretty heavily on the map. 20 seconds left before the dragon.
Whilst we were in replay, that bottom turret did fall. It did get picked up by Immortals. So they still managed to turn the kill into a little bit more of an advantage, showing off their clean macro, as has been this entire game. And they're not really interested in shoving too far forward, threatening any of these inhibitors, because they don't have to. Safe play is the name of the game right now, with the Drake and Baron both up.
Yeah, going to be getting themselves this Cloud Dragon, and I think, you know, a lot of people look at this Cloud Dragon thinking like, oh, it's pretty weak overall to get the soul. And, you know, to some degree, I agree. Having ultimate cooldown isn't the most impactful thing in the world, but the big thing that's actually going to be super helpful for Immortals this game, if they are able to get the last Cloud Dragon, is the movement speed that's going to be coming out from that, right? Every single character in a threat overload composition wants to be very mobile. You want to be able to put yourself wherever you want during these fights. And characters like Jhin, a ton of movement speed already. Characters like Orianna, not as much that they can necessarily work with. And having that extra little bit of mobility, super helpful as they now start transitioning to the top half of the map in order to try and choke the life out of Golden Guardians.
Joey and the rest of Immortals are, as you say, pressing really far forward. And this is something that their coach, Coach Jensen, not player Jensen, was talking about. He was saying that they wanted this Immortals team to be kind of a second squad for Immortals, but not so much Academy. We're seeing that as Topun does make a rare overextension, but the double ulti.
Wow.
This is turnable. Weaver's wool in, Potluck, Shockwave as well. Joey takes the front lines, and they turn it. An overextension from Topun gets punished 1v3, and instead, it is Immortals all the way. The killer instinct into the backlines there from Keith, or from Prismal, was optimistic, and Keith is just chunking him, trading out the damage easily with a single auto.
Yeah, we saw the value of Gale Force coming through there as well for Keith towards the end, because he didn't really need to worry all that much about the fact that Prismal was there. He presses, you know, one of the number keys, puts himself closer to the rest of the team. Still has his flash up for the next time that Prismal wants to try and jump on him. Everybody dead.
Check out Topun.
Yeah.
The Weaver's Wall
so strong.
Sets him up. The team play. Potluck hands him that one, and then the rest of the team is here. They've all been scattered by that.
Yeah. And I really like the fact that Golden Guardians, again, willing to go for some of these plays, because they're playing from a hole. And I always say, you want to lose like Kingzone. You don't want to lose like Jhin Air, right? You don't want to drag out the game for 60 minutes. You don't want to be the team that's still there in the sad plane and just get fatigued after playing for an hour and losing. You want to start making all these plays where you're going to be going more aggressive, saying, like, hey, we have like maybe a 10% chance of winning the game, but this play has a 20% chance of working. So let's do it, right? That's better. Those are good odds based on what we have going off right now, and Golden Guardians are willing to play those odds. Is it going to work? No. 20% means you lose 80% of those plays, but it's better than what you had previously.
I like it. And you're absolutely right. It has been a frustration, I think, of a lot of analysts with LCS teams that will fall behind and then kind of not do anything for 20 minutes. So I like to see Golden Guardians taking risks and trying to pull the game back into their favor. Unfortunately, Immortals, with their firm grasp of the macro, have just managed to exploit every single mistake and keep growing their lead. And Tally, now behind his inhibitor, will just be run down by Topun. That's going to be the inhibitor turret gone. Inhibitor to follow, Rosethorn to follow, as Immortals look real good in their first game here in Academy.
They really do, and Joey, after having such a great performance during lock-in, now looking to tear up Academy as well. Chime tries to do something, and go, you got this.
Stasis!
Gold.
He's still up. Unfortunately, that's short-lived. Gunvi is around here, and this actually may extend the game for a while as Prismal goes in. Keith has to go into stasis. Yunvi has one as stopwatch of his own, but he'll fall underneath his turret. Prismal finally drops, and it's an ace to close the game. At least Golden Guardians made Immortals work for it at the end. But the first win of the Academy season will be handed over to Immortals if they close out their first game 20-4 in the kill sheet.
Yeah, such a clean game coming up from Immortals. Looking very good for this first game here in Academy and kind of setting a statement, right, as we start to see some of the players that are coming through, because obviously Joey, one of the NA veterans, looking very good, very aggressive, but also Topun coming through as well in the top lane, really exerting himself throughout this game, had a couple fantastic ults, one off of teleport, one set up by Potluck, and then being able to have the confidence to just push Tally around and just say, hey, you can't be here, I'm going to run at you and you have to leave. So looking very good so far from Immortals.
Yeah, we saw a little bit of that, I think, oceanic flair. Maybe that's a little bit too much to attribute to Topoon, but you could see that the the Immortals team was willing to take risks, willing to play aggressive through their support and top laner as they took control of the map. And I also want to flag, Joey did play in Proving Grounds, of course, this year. He was part of the stacked Ocean team, which I call out because also on that team was NXI, Yunbi, Eon, and himself, Joey. All of whom have made it to other rosters here. So whilst we're tracking the distribution of legacy players across Academy, maybe also track that Ocean roster across Academy. Any closing thoughts on that game? I think Immortals are clearly a team to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. They looked very good with a number of rookie players coming through here, and I think making that statement early game off the very first thing to come in definitely says that this is a team that we're going to be paying a lot more attention to throughout the regular season as we see all the chaos of all of these players starting to come together. Topoon and Joey gonna be the ones you gotta keep an eye out for.
Yeah. And there will be plenty of those throughout the day. We are going to go to a lightning fast break. We'll come back with an interview in about 2-3 minutes. Then after that, we'll be picking things up with Team Liquid taking on Dignitas Academy. You won't want to miss any of the action, so stay tuned. We'll be right back after this.